William Walker Atkinson's Vril, or Vital Magnetism. Lesson 3 was the mechanism of Vril. This is Lesson 4. Vril in physical manifestation. Vril is in physical manifestation in every activity or function of the body. From the slightest movement of the cell to the more complex activities of the organs of the physical body, Vril is seen to be in manifestation and activity. The subconscious planes of the mind of the individual have control of the majority of the physical activities and functions, the conscious mind not being drawn into the activity. But in these subconscious processes, Vril is ever the active force and power by means of which the work is performed. The subconscious mind, without the power of Vril, would be like a man without arms, hands, or tools, who would seek to perform skilled manual labor. On the other hand, Vril, without the directing impulses of the subconscious mind, would be like the arms, hands, and tools, apart from the directing power of the brain of the workman. It is by the power of Vril that the acorn grows into the oak and the blade of grass forces its way through the hard soil. It is by the power of Vril that the single reproductive cell of the parents develops, grows, and evolves into the babe at birth, and later into the adult man or woman. There is, of course, always mind behind these activities, but there is always also Vril power to perform the work of that mind. Science teaches us that the body is composed of a multitude of single cells, which, forming in groups of greater or less size and degree of complexity, constitute the organs and parts of the body. Each tiny cell has its own degree of mentality, and each its own little charge of Vril. These cells are as tireless workers as the bees in a hive. There is constant activity in the realm of the cells, day and night, without haste and without rest. These little cells are being born, are performing their life tasks, and are dying, being cast from the system and supplanted by new cells which have evolved from them. Every cell is, to an extent, an independent entity, an individual. But this individuality is often merged with that of other cells, and a cooperative cell community is formed for the purpose of performing that function of the common task of the socialistic commonwealth of the body. Some of the cells are stationary, while others are operating under a roving commission. Some are on the scouting line, while others are engaged in actual warfare with the invaders of the body. Others still are held as a reserve corps, awaiting a special call to action. A great body of cells performs the work of the day laborer, and it does the drudgery of the community. Others are engaged in the processes of thought, and are consumed by these activities. Millions of cells giving up their lives to produce a single piece of continued thought work. Some of the cells perform the work of carriers, conveying new material in the blood to all parts of the body, where other cells build it up into physical form. The carrying cells are the hod carriers and the brick carriers of the system, while the building cells are like the bricklayers and carpenters and other artisans. Other cells are busily engaged in carrying away the debris, the worn out tissue, the dead cells, to the great crematory of the lungs, where the waste matter is burned up by the oxygen and cast off through the exhaled breath. Other cells perform the odd jobs of scavenger work and to carry the waste matter to other parts of the system, where it is cast off in excrementitious form. Other cells attend to the work of digestion, purification, assimilation, the chemical laboratories of the system being very extensive and complicated. Other cells are as living instruments and telegraph wires in the nervous system, and receive, send, and transmit the messages of the system, acting as well as transmitters of the additional supply of Vril required in various parts of the body. The standing army and police force of the cell community are very large. These protectors and guardians of the body protect the system from invading germs, bacteria, and other foreign organisms which have found entrance to it. They attack the invaders and either devour them or else cast them forth from the system through the ordinary channels or by means of boils, pimples, and other eruptions. The large force of cells employed in the great chemical laboratories of the system is kept busy at all times. There is oxygen and food substances to be used by the cell groups in all parts of the body. There is carbonic acid refuse and burnt up material to be cast off. There is food to be converted into proper form and conditioned to nourish the system. There is gastric juice, saliva, pancreatic juices, bile, milk, procreative fluids to be manufactured constantly. To give one an idea of the number of cells so employed, the authorities have estimated that in each single cubic inch of blood, there are at least 75 million of the red blood cells alone, not to speak of the white corpuscles and the other classes of cells. 75 million in one single cubic inch. Think of that. And each one of this army actuated by mind and carrying its tiny charge of Vril. And we should remember that at every moment of our lives, from birth to death, the great army of cells is constantly at work, building, repairing, renovating, replacing every portion of our bodies. In a few weeks, our bodies are almost entirely made over. It requires an enormous amount of energy and power to perform this work. And that power is always Vril power. For there is no other power that can do the work, or by which the work can be done. There is a constant using up of Vril power, and there must needs be a constant replenishing of the store of Vril in the body. In addition to the expenditure of Vril in the processes of the cells, we find that there is also an enormous expenditure in the voluntary activities of the individual. Each individual is like a great piece of machinery. He moves about, runs, walks, leaps. He moves his arms and legs, his hands, his fingers, his entire body, in the activities of waking life. Every motion of the body, even the slightest, causes an expenditure of Vril power. And each expenditure must be paid for by a decrease in the store of Vril in the system. Each item of expenditure must be counterbalanced by a renewal of the supply. Else there is physical deterioration and loss of energy to the individual. Many persons are so prodigal of their Vril and so ignorant or heedless regarding the renewal of the supply that they become depleted in vitality, virility, and general nervous energy, and to become physical wrecks or else subjects of the so-called neurasthenia or nervous prostration, which so sorely afflicts the modern race. This result is not caused by excessive thinking, as so many suppose, for the brain will stand an immense amount of excesses, or of regular arduous labor without manifesting evil results. It is the emotional excesses, there's the excesses, the emotional excesses, emotion consuming an enormous amount of Vril, and the waste motion, which tends toward this depletion. Moreover, the average man or woman who suffers from nervous breakdown is not aware of the need of the system for calm repose and relaxation for the purpose of recharging the system with Vril. Even in sleep, these persons keep their nervous system and muscles at attention and exhaust their supply of Vril, just as the careless housewife exhausts the household supply of water by allowing the faucets to dribble and drip. The prevention of this waste of Vril is a very important matter. Second only in importance to the knowledge of the proper methods of acquiring a more than ordinary supply of Vril in order to meet the requirements of modern life. In a civilization which is seemingly bent upon burning up a nerve energy, the ordinary person, pursuing the even tenor of man's natural life, has very little need of instruction along these lines. For he neither wastes nor expends in work more Vril than is normally supplied to the system by means of the impulses of the subconscious mind. But the man of the large cities of today persistently wastes an abnormal amount of Vril, as well as expends in work an also unreasonable amount, and unless he makes up the deficit by the methods made known by a study of the subject, he will suffer by reason thereof. It is deemed extremely probable, according to eminent thinkers along these lines, that in the course of the evolution of the race, nature will adapt the supply of Vril to the increased needs of the race, and the whole matter will adjust itself accordingly. But nature works as slowly as it works surely, and it will be some time before it feels the necessity of automatically adjusting the Vril conditions to meet the unnatural requirements and expenditures of modern life in our large centers of industry. Until then, man should help nature along, as he has in many other ways, and by preventing the unnatural waste and increasing the supply of Vril by methods such as we shall describe in this book, he will be able to maintain an equilibrium and a balance, with consequent preservation of health and energy. He may even go still further, and by increasing his supply of Vril, he may so charge himself with this life energy and nerve force as to become a very dynamo of energy, activity, and power. The man or woman doing this will possess a mighty advantage over the majority of the race at this time. Such a course will mean increased efficiency, increased power, and increased success, and, let us hope, increased happiness. Lesson 5 will be the transformation of Vril.